Okay, we're going to be starting here in just half a second. We have a couple more panelists who will be joining us momentarily. But I wanted to start with this. We're really doing a couple of things today. Mostly our topic is, not mostly, completely our topic is extraordinary marketing for financial advisors. It's a huge topic, as you might imagine, and so we'll only scratch the surface. We're doing this in conjunction of the release of my newest book. It is Extraordinary Marketing for Financial Advisors. And that's what I was showing you a second ago with our screen share. There is Mindy. And Mindy, Dr. Moody is having some technical challenges as well. So we will see if he manages to join us. You might want to change your name there so they don't think we're both Stephen Oliver. And so while we're getting started, I want to give you a couple of thoughts. This was some feedback on the new book. This is preliminaries. People are logging in here from Dan Kennedy. If you're not familiar with Dan Kennedy, he's done an extreme amount of work with financial advisors and various people in this niche, as well as a lot of others. He's a friend and mentor to me for about 20 years now. But this was his comments on the new book. And then here is David D., who's also a high-level marketing expert. He was formerly of Dan Kennedy's company, and now he does speaking, and he does a number of different marketing programs, including a marketing organization independent marketing organization directly targeted at financial advisors. Here was his feedback on the book. Here's one of our clients, Michael Graff, his comments. I liked his comment. It has me wondering, why didn't I think of that? I used to do that. Why did I stop? And then last but not least on this, our client, Daniel Hecht, who's grown 22 new agents and 3 advisors to their team just recently. And this is his feedback on the book. So we'll let that sit for a second, and then we will get fully started into our agenda. Oh, and here's one more, Peter Harnish, who is I don't know, I think Peter's at $250,000 plus AUM, well into the 7 figures, all of that level, one of the top 60 of all times in his rather large company. So this is Peter's feedback. Anyway, so here's a little bit of what we're going to cover today. And so we will be getting started here. And just as you can get a chance, here's the table of contents of the new book to give you a sense as well. And then we'll get going here thoroughly into our agenda. So let's start with this. I wanted to kind of hit these chapters in sort of in order here. So I thought I would start with this. And so let's start with this. Is the one of the early chapters in the book, as I was just showing you a second ago, is called Money Laying Around that you haven't picked up yet. And one of the first places that we always start with advisors, especially somebody who has a fairly established practice, and for those of us that we work with directly as clients in our highest level programs, they tend to be very established practices, established businesses, tend to have a strong number of clients. But we always start with this, is there's money laying around on the floor that they haven't bothered to pick up. And what most people do, frankly, what most financial advisors do is they do a horrible job of monetizing their existing client list, of turning their existing client list into referrals, into additional family members, legacy client with a second and third generation. The other element that I think is extremely of a concern from a standpoint of leaving a lot of money on the table is what they have a tendency to do is not follow up at all well with leads, with quality prospects, with people that they've talked to before, in order to get them to convert to clients. What we see oftentimes is that, they'll maybe follow up for a week, follow up for a couple of weeks. Maybe if they're really aggressive, they'll follow up for a month. But really, with everything that we teach, the concept is the marketing Parthenon. I mean, kind of like the facade of Wall Street that I have in the background on that painting. But it's just, you picture the Parthenon in Greece or in Nashville, the replica there is, we want to create a whole bunch of pillars to constantly be creating new prospects into the pipeline for advisors. But unfortunately, what most of them do is they make a stab at somebody once or twice and then it falls apart. What I've seen it happening a lot of times, and by the way, I play prospect for all the big companies. I think, for instance, Fisher Investments does a marvelous job at prospecting and just a abysmal job at follow-up once they get somebody in the pipeline. But once you have somebody who raises their hand, the reality is oftentimes we think, well, they're either interested or they're not interested right now. If they have responded to me and if they have become a client, obviously they're interested. If they haven't responded to me, they haven't become a client, obviously they're not interested. Well, that's exactly the wrong way to think about these things. What happens is, in today's world, and that's an overused phrase, but it's more and more true. And by the way, this was true in the 50s and 60s. I mean, if I ran a TV spot on one of the three major networks, ABC, CBS, or NBC back then, not 500 plus channels on cable and streaming and internet and streaming services, all that stuff. But if I ran a spot, let's say a 30-second spot, and got somebody's attention, even back then, the conversation was always, you need to be in front of them 7 times, 8 times, 9 times, 10 times before they ever pay attention. And that number is, again, a number from 50 years ago, when the number of advertising sources, when the number of channels, everything else was limited, pre-internet. Nowadays, oh my goodness, they don't see it 25, 30, 40 times. You don't even have an impact whatsoever. And when it comes to follow-up, I see a number of things happen. But what I'm saying is, we start with, on new clients, what are their current resources? And where is it that their starting point is on really maximizing their results? And oftentimes the starting point is, we're getting a pretty good flow of new prospects, but we give up on them way too quickly. So the conversion rate from the time they raise their hand, and whether that's, the old card system method, 10-3-1, which is a really dated way to look at it. I know the numbers hold up, but if I have 10 quality prospects, what I'm not going to do is make a couple run at them. And if I get them in a one-on-one appointment, then I'm going to follow through with them. And if I don't, I'm going to give up. That's not what I want to do. What I want to do is, for every quality prospect, I want to follow up with them essentially forever. I mean, I want to follow up with them until they move to Afghanistan or threaten to kill my firstborn if they ever hear from me again. And I'm only being halfway facetious about it. What we want to do is, we want to follow up with email. Sure, email is cheap, it's free, it's relatively easy, one thing or another. But I also want to follow up with direct mail. I want to follow up with text messaging. I want to follow up with live events. I want to invite them to come to various live events. I want them to show up in person if they're local. I want them to show up on a webinar, a Zoom meeting. I want to invite them to live events where they're welcome to bring their friends. And again, we'll get advisors who, the primary prospect, maybe they never get them for whatever reason, but they get 3 of their friends just because we have such a robust follow-up system for them in place. So the first money laying around the floor that people don't pick up is, they miss the fact that once you have somebody who has expressed an interest, you have somebody who's shown that they're qualified, you want to follow up with them forever. And you want to follow up with them with every medium, and kind of going from maybe from least effective to most effective is, you want to follow up with them with retargeting. And retargeting, if you're not familiar, is somebody shows up at a website, a HTML link is buried in your follow-up system, and then they are retargeted with advertisements for you on Google, all of Google's properties, LinkedIn's various resources, Facebook, and their various properties, for instance, Instagram. So retargeting is once somebody raises their hand, and by the way, that can be a referral gives you a name, address, and email address, or it can be somebody visited your website, or it can be you have advertising on Facebook and they click the link. It can be you have pay-per-click AdWords advertising, they click the link. It can be you have a paid ad running on LinkedIn and they click the ad. And it can be you have an existing database, and a database, whether it's on pieces of paper that people have filled out at live events, or whether it's in a sophisticated CRM system, Salesforce, or any of the various finance industry equivalents, is all of those lists can be retargeted. In other words, once you have them on your list, you can show ads to them forever on Facebook and Instagram. You can show ads to them forever on LinkedIn. You can show ads to them forever in Google and all of Google's properties. And then, by that point, you're getting most of the different sources online anyway. The other thing you can do, of course, is you can upload them into LinkedIn, and you can then do connection requests with people who are in your active database. So I said I'd go from least effective to most effective, and that's powerful, but it's not nearly as effective as a lot of other things we'll talk about. The second element of follow-up is, of course, email. And email, I have a love-hate relationship with email. And, pre-pandemic, I would say it was mostly hate and very little love. And the contrast is that the pandemic resurrected it to some extent. And what happened is parents whose kids were at home pretending to go to school remotely on Zoom, having a year of their education mucked up by the powers that be. But parents had to check their email because they were getting notifications about homework and class schedules and so forth. People who started working remotely, and keep in mind, the biggest software innovations for corporations are systems like Microsoft Teams, Slack, et cetera, all of which are designed to get rid of email as internal business tools. But all of a sudden, people working from home had to pay attention to their email because they're getting job assignments and internal communications. So email made a pretty roaring comeback during the pandemic, and is still stronger than it was before the pandemic. However, in order to get somebody's attention with email, you got to be constantly bombarding them. There was, in the Wall Street Journal a couple of years ago, there was an article about these are major retailers, Nordstrom and the like, and they were showing that those people who really know how to sell their product were emailing their customer list between 360 and 780 times a year. In other words, on average, once or twice a day. And if you look at everybody from Amazon to, you go through the list of companies like Groupon and so forth, if you're subscribed to them, you're getting stuff from them constantly. It's not like they're sitting down and saying, we're going to be careful with our prospect list and email them once a month. And all the studies show if you email somebody once a month or even just once a week, is perceived as spam because it's not familiar and in front of them. You really need to be on some kind of conversational, informational email every day. And you've got to make sure it has a personal voice, not a corporate voice. Just subscribing them to, LPL or Schwab or Northwestern Mutual or whatever's corporate email, better than nothing. But most of their stuff is written by 12 attorneys and 3 people who just graduated with a bachelor's in marketing, who are 23 years old, who have no connection whatsoever with your clientele. So most of that stuff that's written, out of corporate is not written by sharp marketers. It's written by attorneys who, God help us all, shouldn't be allowed to communicate with their clients, and it's written by hacks that are fresh out of a bachelor's with marketing, who don't know anything about actual direct response marketing. So that stuff is not very helpful as well. The next thing on follow-up, and again, this is going kind of in order, starting with retargeting Facebook, LinkedIn, and Google, following with email. Then we have follow up with text messaging. And text messaging is, and I'll wrap 2 or 3 things in there: automated voicemail, broadcast voicemail, and text messaging. Text messaging is massively more effective, like by a factor of 10 than email is. And what happens is email has deliverability problems. In other words, it just doesn't ever get there. It has problems that it gets put in the spam folder. Google now has not only a spam folder, but a promotional folder. So it gets put in the promotional folder or the spam folder, which pretty much guarantees nobody's going to read it. So email or text messaging, I was talking about, is almost 100% deliverability, almost infallible on actually getting to their email box, and it still has almost 100% open rate. So it is much, much, much more effective. And if you have an integrated text messaging in your, and there he is, there's our PhD and online marketing expert, actually managed to get online here.
Yeah, but
Greg,
apparently not Zoom panelist expert with getting the links. Apparently,
we're gonna nickname you Jeff before long.
Yeah.
That's an inside joke.
That's an inside fighting word joke.
Those of everybody on the meeting here, but holding the thought, Greg, I was going through kind of in hierarchy of follow-up, and by the way, I did something. I did something that's very unusual for me. I actually created a PowerPoint slide deck here for us that I'm using occasionally. I mostly despise PowerPoint and or any of the equivalents. I was doing my best to do a Steve Jobs version of it rather than a death by PowerPoint Microsoft Teams version of it. But then the next level of follow-up is direct mail, and direct mail gets a bad reputation. I mean, and that'll be one of my slides here, but it gets called snail mail and all kinds of stuff. But I got to tell you, Greg, we know now is most people are getting 200 emails a day in their email box, and they're getting 3, 4, maybe 5 pieces of direct mail in their mailbox a day. And there's all different ways of automating personal looking direct mail. And by the way, step back a second. An awful lot of advisors are fearful of using text messaging. And in fact, I believe it was FINRA just slapped around some advisors for executing trades in one thing or another by text messaging and without keeping a record of it. And if you didn't know, there are secure and text messaging databases that can do two-way communications, can keep track of it one thing or another. So for all of the compliance requirements for client communications, there are systems that do that. But most of what we're talking about isn't client communications, it's prospect communications, or it's communications with clients to invite them to a group event. It's not two-way communications about trade in one thing or another. And so what we are not suggesting is anything that would create compliance problems, nothing that would create FINRA, SEC problems. Everything what we're talking about is about mostly converting prospects to clients or inviting clients to group events, not encouraging confidential communications, executing trades, giving advice, any of that type of thing that'll get you in trouble. But you should research, and I know some of you are captive, and your company is back in the Stone Ages. Greg, we work, and Mindy, we work with some of the biggest organizations in the world, and they tend to be 10 years behind on the technology, and that's a challenge, but that is what we're finding.
And we're aware of that, and we're understanding of those issues. So don't fret about that. But at the same time, I think if you're not trying to push some boundaries, not to get in trouble, but making sure that you're doing everything you can, then you're not paying attention.
Yeah. Well, and maybe said even differently, I think most people are kind of cowered in the corner, crawled up under the desk, fearful of compliance. But if you sit down and anybody who's got a CFP or a bachelor's in their Series 7 or, whatever certifications you have, it's pretty easy to understand what the compliant ins and out issues are. And oftentimes you're going to have a little, battle with your compliance officer or with your, with the legal powers that be in your bigger companies. And we're not looking at anything that would get you in trouble, but there really isn't any issues with compliance from what we'd be suggesting as far as prospect follow-up. And then the last piece of follow-up, which is, this is now a double-edged sword, but it's just picking up the phone and calling somebody. But here's the thing, and Greg, I think this is your idea 3 or 4 years ago now, but what we know for sure happens is that most every phone number you're going to get nowadays, even among 50, 60-year-olds, is going to be a mobile number. Rarely you're getting a landline, no matter what your source is. And what we know is, unlike what used to happen, is people are sitting down at the dining room table and a telephone solicitation comes in and they answer their phone, is almost all phone calls that come in to a mobile number, if they're an unrecognized number, especially if they're an 800 number or something like that, are going to not get answered. So we always start with the share a contact record, or a V card is the one of the technical terms. But we always start with sharing a contact record so that we're in their database. And then if we talk to them on the phone, when we're texting them, when we're emailing, everything else, all they have to do is click that, add that to their phone. So from now on, when we call them, it shows up. And now if they ignore you, they're ignoring you because they intend to ignore you, not because it's an unknown number. But still, nothing replaces talking to somebody one-on-one on a phone. The problem is getting people to answer the phone. And so one solution is getting that contact record in their phone. The other solution, and again, this was your deal, Greg, but what is it? Call, text, email, CTE. So you make an outbound call, you get voicemail, you leave a quick message, you immediately text them, and then you send them an email. And what one of the advisors that we work with, by the way, this was Peter. He was just shocked at how effective it was when we set up a calendaring link. And instead of and he's got 4 full-time people on his staff, but he would have a person spend all day trying to line up appointments for the next week for him. But when we added the calendaring link, connected it to his calendar, and then showed him how to text it and to email it, all of a sudden people were setting their own follow-up appointments. And he was just shocked at the effectiveness of that. And so one of the things that we certainly do is we make sure that Calendarly or Schedule Once, aka HubSpot, or perhaps you have an internal version of OneSub, yeah. What did I say? Schedule Once. HubSpot. Oh, that's yet a different software CRM package. They all start running together as much as this crap as we deal with. But is that's a solution? Is you initiate an outbound call, leave a voicemail, send them a text. You can send them a text with your contact record. Hey, I'm just trying to get hold of you. This is so and so. Here's my contact record. Hit add to contacts. But then you can send them a calendar link and say, hey, I was trying to schedule a time for us to meet on your annual update or whatever it might be. Here, put that on my calendar. But let me go back, if we will, to I know, shocking here, Greg, to my PowerPoint. This is our next topic of conversation here, really quickly. And again, we're just scratching the surface. Greg, I shared earlier with them the table of contents for the books, and for the book, I must, and we're only going to barely tap the surface. But
and you went over how they would get a copy of the book too, right, sir?
Not yet, but we will.
Okay.
But here's a little cartoon that I think kind of anchors in one of our more humorous behind the scenes conversations. Is financial advisors, for whatever reason, all kind of act like they're trying to have a sameness and boring contest. Financial advisors and CPAs And something I stole from that great book by Tim Ferriss, the 4-Hour Work Week years ago, was his analogy was the bald-headed fat guy in the red BMW, and our analogies kind of become the the guy in the J.C. Penney suits and behind the oak desk. But if you go through people's LinkedIn profiles, you go through their websites. Just before this webinar, I looked at websites for I think 5 or 6 of the participants here just in the last 30 minutes, and I couldn't tell one from the other. They all looked exactly the same, probably done by the same damn company. And I looked at probably 10 LinkedIn profiles. They might as well, I mean, some were female, some were male, but other than that, they may have all just used the same stock photo out of Shutterstock or something like that. They were that generic. And what we want to do is we want to create a way that you stand out from the crowd. What's interesting about you? What are your hobbies? What's your background? What are you skillful at? Sometimes that's niching. And so getting really good at targeting a specific audience. Other times it's about your hobbies. Other times it's about what's interesting about your background. Are you an immigrant? Are you, first person who went to college in your whole family tree? Are you a collector of Porsches? Are you a fly fisherman? What makes you interesting? And then let's figure out how to make you a unique person who stands out both for your capabilities and competencies, but just as a human being. And Greg, that's one of the things I think people, and Mindy, people miss is all humans want to do business with a human. They don't want to, nobody wants to do, business with Mass Mutual or Northwestern Mutual or Schwab or whatever. They don't care about, faceless companies. Some of the companies that do a fairly good job attach a face to it, a Ken Fisher or a Charles Schwab. All of a sudden you have a founder who's the face of it sometimes. Think back to Dave Thomas and Wendy's, or, Lee Iacocca turning around Chrysler, or, Louis Kayyem, Victor Kayyem on, I like the company so much I like the Brazier so much I bought the company. But people want to do business with a human, not with a faceless bureaucracy. And what happens with advisors is it's kind of like they want to be I'm a Star Trek fan. They want to be one of the Borg, one of the collective, and they don't want to stand out from the crowd. But people want to deal with somebody who's unique, who has some unique background and experience. They don't want to deal with somebody who's just a faceless automaton, just because they happen to be in their neighborhood or something like that.
Well, and all the qualifications that you have are kind of assumed that you have those qualifications. Mm-hmm. It'd be like a primary care physician. I mean, you go to a primary care physician, you kind of assume that they went to medical school and they, are an MD or a DO, and that they know how to do that, because that's, what you usually don't go and analyze their qualification. You might, some of you might. There may be a few people on the call that say, well, I checked out my medical doctor, thoroughly, but most people are not doing that. They're not checking to see what your qualifications and whether you're a CFP or what letters you have behind your name. They don't know what college you went to, or unless that's part of your niching. So all those qualifications that you think are special that make you unique are probably not what's making you unique. It's you that's unique for whatever reasons that you're talking about.
Yeah. And that goes right along with our next topic, by the way. And then we're gonna just barely touch the surface on all of this, but I thought this was cute. This is obviously a cartoon about outbound cold calls, but the way that most advisors, and I don't like to use the terminology that prospecting sucks, but the way that most advisors go about getting new clients is it's kind of like they're running around doing cold calls, cold contacting on LinkedIn. You might as well be the Fuller Brush person. That may be a bit too dated a reference for somebody. Knocking on doors, begging for business. I mean, if you want to be the expert, the investment advisor, the expert, the guru at the top of the mountain, you can't be the one sitting there doing 100 outbound cold dials a day. reaching out to people and begging them for their business. That just, that doesn't work. What we want to do is we want to position you as the expert. And again, you go back to what you were saying, Greg. Again, going through all these LinkedIn profiles, you say CFP, RICP, CHFC, all the different, there's what, probably last count 95 different designations, most of which nobody knows what the hell it means. But even that is kind of the minimum threshold, the minimum requirement that somebody expects for you to be competent. It's not why they end up doing business and why they're attracted to you, right? But what attracts people is exclusivity, uniqueness, and they want the guru on the top of the mountain, right? I mean, the guy wandering up and down the sidewalk with a sign offering to give you free advice, you don't want it, but literally you have to go to the Himalayas and climb the mountain and stress and struggle to get to the top of the mountain, to get to the guru, to ask him the questions. That's what people are looking for. So they want the person who's the author, they want the person with screening mechanisms. But again, this is an industry that's it's completely goes back to, I shared that Dan Kennedy quote earlier, is most people start with a sales mentality that they have to, do cold calls and cold contacting and one thing or another. And I saw a really idiotic article recently of one of the big companies was shifting their training program. I won't say who right now, but they were shifting their training from doing cold dials in the training program to doing cold contacting on LinkedIn. And their whole excuse is that women and other people who weren't white weren't having great success with it. But the reality is what it meant was, the underlying tone of the article is, they provided no quality lead traffic. They provided no quality marketing activities. They were training people how to be cold call salespeople. And when they had difficulty with doing 100 cold dials a day, talking to people cold, is they figured out, well, pretty much anybody can type, so we'll just let them do cold contacts on LinkedIn, all of which is horrible positioning. I mean, if you want to be the guru at the top of the mountain, you don't want to be the salesperson begging for their business. What would you guys add to that before we move on here?
Yeah, I mean, it's counterintuitive, I think sometimes, especially when you're starting out your business or you're desperate it's counterintuitive emotionally. When you're desperate for business, and maybe desperate's not the right word, but when you're wanting a lot more business, when you want to double your assets under management, or when you want to double the number of clients you have, or whatever the metric is you're trying to change, you might feel like, well, I've got to be more open, or I've got to open the doors bigger, or I've got to be more accessible to people, or I've got to lower my standard. So that'll increase the volume. And ironically, it works exactly the opposite. When you look like you're more, I don't know, I don't want to use.
But when you look like you're in demand, that's the word.
Yeah, it looks like, if you look like you'll go out with anybody if you're dating, then nobody wants to go out with you, right? So you have to have an appearance like you're in demand, even if at the moment you're not. And you have to, how do you do that? Well, there's ways you can do that. One is as you said, one would be have a white paper, a book, make your online presence be something where they have some free resources that people can get. That's the next step, would be to have an appointment with you. They would need to read the free resources first, and consequentially, then that allows them to take a smaller step towards you, rather than to have to. A lot of times we see people's websites, and this is a different topic, but we see people's websites and it says, here's a bunch of stuff about me, now set an appointment and get started with me. And that's like asking somebody to marry you, along with the other metaphor I use. That's like asking somebody to marry you on your first date. Well, that's like too much. So it's all the way that people are approaching their prospects it's disconnected. It's not really appropriate.
And to be fair, most of the websites we see, they're doing zero really to drive traffic to them.
Yeah,
So
there's
it's
no
just
traffic
a,
going to it. Yeah, and then there's
yeah,
no traffic converting once they get there.
yeah.
So it's there's two big problems.
Yeah, it's a referral from a client, and they've contacted them once, and then they go online to, see their brochure. That's really what it is, and it's a pitiful approach to marketing, a pitiful approach to getting new traffic in. But in practical terms, that's they don't see what the problem is, because hell, nobody's going to their website anyway. So what difference does it make?
Mhm.
If that makes sense. But we're going to have to hit quickly two more topics really quickly. So let's see if we can accomplish that. The next what I've discussed and is referrals a little bit. This is a kind of a cute cartoon, I thought. You throw it to me, I'll introduce you to my financial advisor. The In almost all cases, referrals, people who are not very successful in this business, what they think is, if I do a great job with my clients and my clients all love me, they'll send me, send me their friends. And yeah, you might get occasionally somebody from that source, but really it doesn't work that way. What we have found is there's two major categories, and we spend a lot more time in the book and so forth going through this. Two major categories of ways to get lots and lots and lots of referrals, and I'll tag on one and make that three. There's the traditional approach, which is I'm talking to a client and I ask them who they know. But even with that, you want to be more sophisticated. You want to isolate faces, give them specific groups of people to think about in one thing or another. What we've done with some people at the lowest end is, at least they go connect with their clients on LinkedIn, and they look and see who they're connected with and know more about their company and what their role is and all that stuff. And then they can isolate faces of, who do you know at XYZ Chemical, who's also in the C-suite, who might have these similar needs. What social organizations, I saw you were involved with Kiwanis and JC's, who in your Kiwanis group might have these particular issues. You can isolate faces. But the other two elements that we're seeing that are really very powerful are, one, live events. And that can be live event like what we're doing, a webinar or a Zoom meeting. It can be a live event, actually in person, serving them a steak dinner, or in a boardroom with a whiteboard. But educational events where all of your clients feel comfortable inviting their friends. So category one is being more effective at just asking and doing it more consistently. Number two is having regular, and by regular, I mean at least every month. Oftentimes we do 2 or 3 Zoom meetings, webinars, live in-person meetings, etc. We do try to keep everybody out of this, draw a 3-mile radius around their office bullshit. So we do try to focus on having a broader area where you're selling, maybe the entire U.S. Or North America, depending upon your licensing and so forth, not just in a Albuquerque. But the but one element is live events, and of course you can do Zoom, webinar, one thing or another. We have people from all over the world here. We have a couple of people registered from New Zealand, Australia, and so forth, who are either watching live, or I'm guessing New Zealand and Australia, given the time difference, are going to watch the replay. But that's one element. So one element is asking more effectively, knowing more about them, really figuring out what groups and organizations, and figuring out what their circles of influence are, and then figuring out ways to more effectively penetrate their circle of influences. Number two is creating live events where your clients bring people to those events. Mostly they're a variety of educational events on a variety of different topics. But the third is pass along tools. And this is where you were going earlier, Greg, is having a book. I have an advisor I work with, and he's been creating a, not like this. This is the new book, not like this. That's more substantive, but 20, 30, 40 page book every quarter on a specific subject. So giving them pass along tools. I mean, I've seen everything from, financial planning for pilots, financial planning for, Procter and Gamble staff. We did one for Vonage. We did one for, we were in Silicon Valley. I forget which company it was, but you can do very specific company-oriented things, or you can do very specific niche-oriented things. But having pass-along tools that you give your clients, it can be white papers, reports, books, there, many other sources. But what happens is, if you're not in front of your clients every week and you don't give them tools and resources to pass along, what happens is when a subject matter comes up that might be useful for you, is you're not even on their mind. If you're meeting with somebody once a year or twice a year, they can have lots of conversations with their friends and you're not even on their mind. And we're quickly running on our clock here, so let's try to briefly hit one more topic. What were you going to say, Greg?
Yeah, I was going to say, you're not on their mind. And even if you were on their mind, you can't trust them to do a good job selling you. So the pass along tool, then when they hand your book to them, that puts you in a complete authority position, or your white paper, and then gives them all the information they need to then contact you in a very high level that makes you stand out, just like we started this whole thing with, from all the other people with all the alphabet soup behind their name. Of qualifications. So that's why that's a tool that we find is really effective. And those are easy to do, by the way. Anybody that sometimes we bring that up with people and they go, "Oh my God, that would be the hardest thing in the world to put a white paper together." It's very easy, and it can even be done for you.
Well, and oftentimes it's just like this. We do 45 minutes or an hour on Zoom. It automatically machine transcribes it. We can hand it off to somebody like rev.com to have a human being clean up the machine transcription. We can then hand it off to a ghostwriter if we wanted to turn it into something readable. And now you've got a chapter in a book, you've got a white paper, you've got a video recording, which could go on a thumb drive, it could go on a business card, it could be texted via YouTube or Vimeo link. There's all kinds of things you can do by multi-using a contrast. And let's touch this real quickly is, we were running an ad, or still are, I guess, plate liquors are quality prospects. And that's the chapter of the, in the title of the chapter of that particular chapter in the book. But, this is a little cartoon about live presentations, but we see almost everybody who's doing live presentations doing them so poorly that, frankly, they're getting some traffic off of them, and it works. If I send a targeted list, Greg, you'll remember one of our clients, we went through an analysis, and it was another company doing the mailing, but one, he was getting a good ROI, meaning he was getting a 5 or 6 to 1 return on his investment that he had into it. But the list that they were sending was an anemic list. It took us approximately 5 minutes to get a list that would have been 10 times more targeted from a standpoint of both quality of their investment opportunities and quality of the overall people on the list. But number two is he was doing an anemic job of converting them to appointments and an anemic job converting them to clients. And a lot of people we talk to, they say, "Oh yeah, everybody I meet with becomes clients," but they're going off that old 10-3-1 ratio, right? I have 3 meetings, I get 1 client, and I have 10 prospects, I get 3 meetings. Well, if I have 20 qualified prospects in a room, I want to have 18 or 19 meetings. I don't want 10-3-1. I want probably 19 of them I'm going to get face-to-face with. Oftentimes we get 100%. And then of those, I don't want to close a third. I want to close 60-70% of them. But you can only do that if you start with the right list, you're putting only qualified people in the room, and then you're hitting the right hot buttons for them, and have a process that positions you as the guru, the expert, doesn't position you as no different than anybody else. What would you two add to that?
Well, and the process usually is really poor. The process ends up being in just about every case that we see. A lot of times the content's really good, and the person does a good job of speaking, and then at the end they just say, "Well, yeah, and if you want to come meet us here, go to my link.
Go see Martha at the back."
Yeah, and it's just a really poor job. So that we don't have time to fix that process, but none of these numbers are outstanding. Instead of 10-3-1, it should be more like 10-8-5. And that would make a massive difference in everybody's practice if they had that kind of numbers. And again, it's not hard to do that. It's just not the norm because people aren't following a good process.
Yeah, and
That's one thing. It just gives me anxiety when I hear how people are doing this incorrectly.
yeah, and I thought this was cute about direct mail. Um, shipping the manual labor is a cute idea. It's stupid, but it's a cute idea. What we want to do is we want to create a Parthenon where we've got a bunch of leads coming in from, say, social media, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, all of those sources. We have Google clicks, search optimization, lots of content that we're developing. We have referrals coming in through educational opportunities. We have referrals coming in from pass along tools. We have referrals coming in from just staying in touch and in front of our clients and communicating with them effectively. We have direct qualified prospects coming in from direct mail, direct qualified prospects coming in from speaking gigs, from working directly internal with companies, with working with the right circles of influence. And then we can talk about other circle of influence marketing and so forth. I want to move, as usual, Greg, we're going to skip through about half of what I had prepped for us there. But which is the problem with me doing a PowerPoint is we of course never get to about 2/3 of it. But let's go to this. We have this marketing program that we put together, and Greg, you and I did most of the heavy lifting, and then Mindy and Merrick did most of the heavy lifting behind the scenes. But we put together this massive marketing program, and we show the picture of DVDs and CDs, but we're not in the dark ages. We also deliver it on thumb drive. We deliver it on digital download on the website. You can play the video streaming. You can download the audio. MP3, you can play it streaming, however mechanism you want. But this program hits the A to Z of what we've been talking about here, and a ton of things that we haven't been talking about. But our subjects were how to position yourself as the guru, how to really make sure that you stand out from the crowd, how not to be doing just cold outbound prospect sales that then position yourself poorly, how to create a sales process that's replicatable, that beats what those industry averages are that are 50, 60 years dated now, to get out of a standard sales mode. And then we talk about what's working right now in 2022 and beyond on Facebook, on LinkedIn. We're doing what is it, last count, Mindy, 6 different things on LinkedIn, all of which are working really well. Everything from, buying paid ads to automating cold contacting to posting strategies and video strategies and so forth. And that's just one element. We're also doing live events by webinar, Zoom, in-person events, but creating a better qualified clientele, creating much better follow-up systems. That's a slide I should have shown, automated and not automated, but following up with all prospects who come through that prospect by text, by voicemail, by email, by direct mail, by live person, preferably not yourself if you're the advisor doing live outbound follow-up to schedule appointments, by scheduling links and so forth. But we set up a variety of ways to stay in front of your clients, to create referrals from them every month, every week, to create systems to be top of mind awareness, to be always communicating with them and give you easy sources. I've only scratched the surface there. Greg, any other topics on there that I haven't hit very well yet?
Well, what I would say is sometimes people might see this as, well, or advisors might see this as, man, there's a lot of stuff and I'd have to go through this and it'd be a lot of work, but it's really set into sections so that whatever your the one that you think you need the most help with, you can do that section. You do that section, really get that digested and done. And that's the way it's organized, so that, maybe you know that you need to get some help with your website, and maybe that's going to be outsourced. You don't want anything to do with it. You don't want to have to do the work on it, but you just want to know enough so that you don't outsource it to a company that's going to, do it poorly. this is perfect because now you can understand what you're really trying to do and what's good and what's bad. I think that's a big problem that we have, because you can't be, there's too much complexity to be a jack of all trades and a master of all trades, and you just can't do that. But what you have to do is a responsible, essentially a business, a small business owner, when you're in practice for yourself, is be good enough to quarterback each of these pieces of the business. And this is such a good system, because now you can be a quarterback of it, or if you want to get more into depth, we've got that for you too. So if you need more depth, that's great. But if you need to know enough so that you can quarterback it adequately, you can do that as well. And
here's the proof of the new book. And we haven't mentioned how to use the email effectively, how to effectively use text messaging, what the messaging strategy should be on all those things. And ironically, neither one of us have talked about how to create a website that converts, how to create a website that creates traffic and develop that. But with this package, we're going to make sure you get the pre-publication copy of the book. And part of the reason we're getting the pre-publication copy out is we love to have feedback. But again, I shared earlier the table of contents. This is all of the elements that's covered in it. Not that you can see that, but we're doing a release here with the new book, and the release really is a variety of things. We have the pre-publication copy of the new book, and if you get the pre-publication copy of the book, you'll also get the publication copy. Pre-publication, we'll send you a digital copy, and on publication, we'll send you the full hard copy as well as a digital copy. I know most people still prefer to read on real books rather than digital. But we also have this complete Extraordinary Advisor marketing package that's at Extraordinary Advisor Marketing. We're selling that with the release of the book at 75% off. So 75% off the normal retail. But we're also launching the Advisor Wealth Masteries Inner Circle Marketing Program, which is an ongoing newsletter, ongoing success skills program, ongoing discussion and support, and coaching with a monthly Q&A, a whole bunch of other moving parts. But we're going to give you a 60-day free access to that, absolutely, with the idea of, we want to make sure you get the marketing program online and offline, physically delivered, digitally delivered, whatever is best for your consumption. And frankly, a lot of times I get physically delivered stuff just so I remember to go find the digital stuff and to go through it. But what we're going to do is include the follow-up to make sure you get the implementation strategy in place. We'll help you with all the different pieces, put together a comprehensive marketing plan. And again, that comprehensive marketing plan typically is 15 or 20 different mechanisms, some of them automated, others not, but many of them automated, that create traffic, new qualified clients, and qualified is a key element there every month, and really eliminates a lot of the manual labor in order to get you really rolling in your practice. I am shocked by how many advisors just sit around and hope for better traffic, but they just won't do anything to get it going, other than they think, well, I'm going to have to make 100 cold calls a day again, or something like that. And that's just a pathetic strategy. So extraordinaryadvisormarketing.com, or probably even better yet, call Mindy here, who's been kind of silent today, but 303-808-8719. You can give Mindy a call. She'll make sure you get the digital delivery of the program immediately. She'll make sure you get the digital delivery of the book immediately. Again, that's the pre-publication copy of the book. Immediately upon it being published, you'll get the publication copy of the digital file, as well as a publication copy of the hard copy. But you'll immediately get the full program. And the book, Greg, really the book is designed as a companion piece to the marketing program. And what we designed the marketing program as you have all the content by video, you also have the content that is digestible by audio. You also have the transcripts, but you also have a clear step-by-step implementation guide, graphics to the follow-up systems, graphics that tie to the follow-up process, etc. So you have, again, I learned much better by reading, and then I learned by watching. If I listen purely by audio, it's good informational content, but it doesn't help me implement. Other people prefer to read the transcripts while listening to the audio. Other people prefer the video, whatever it might be. But this isn't it's not hypothetical marketing. What this is direct in the field, what's working in 2022, what's projected to be leading edge in 2023, how you use email effectively, how you use other follow-up systems effectively, how you use your website effectively, how you develop all of the different pieces, and how you use direct mail effectively.
Yeah, and I mean everything is to get you real results, and it's not theoretical. And one thing it's really important to note is that when you go, one strategy that people seem to want to use is they look around at other people and what they're doing and go, hey, I'll try what they do, I'll try what they do, and try what they do. And number one, most of the people that you're looking at are either not that successful or moderately successful. But number two, they may be, maybe they just had a bunch of buddies in their frac group, and that's why they ended up getting a lot of assets under management or whatever. And it may not have anything to do with them consistently being able to market well, or doing their sales process well, or retain their clients very well. So there's a lot of factors in long-term success, and looking at one individual advisor to see whether or not they've had long-term success is really a recipe for ruin.
Well, and I think it's Earl Nightingale that said, if you don't have a success system in place that works, what you should do is look around at what everybody else is doing and do the opposite. Ogilvy also had a great quote like that. Dan Kennedy calls what the industry is marketing incest. Is everybody kind of looks around and they're all stuck in a sales oriented model that's based upon cold prospecting and manual labor, and then they get stuck in that mode. That's just the dumbest thing you can possibly do. But again, extraordinaryadvisormarketing.com, or give Mindy a call, 303-808-8719. Two things I didn't mention. Number one is there's 100% money back guarantee for 365 days. So, give us a holler in October next year and say you didn't double your business, and we're happy to give you 100% of your money back. So it's 100% money back, no risk guarantee. And also, even at 75% off, you can do it in 3 or 4 payments if you prefer. But it's a very low investment, very easy to get started. And again, we're going to get you the pre-publication copy of the book with the one caveat is we'd love to have your feedback on how you felt about that. We've got some great feedback so far. I shared a lot of that earlier, but we'd love to have your feedback on that. But again, Mindy's number, 303-808-8719. Looks like somebody just called her, so she's on the phone with somebody right now. Give her a call or text her on that number, and she can get right back to you. Or extraordinaryadvisormarketing.com. If you go to the website, be forewarned, it gives you the 75% discount, but it doesn't list yet the 60-day free trial. It doesn't list the pre-publication copy of the book and the publication copy of the book, but we guarantee you that you'll get all of that. And it has listed there the 365 day money back guarantee. So next October or anytime in between, if you don't think it's incredibly valuable. And again, any and every way that you want to consume the material, if you still have a DVD or CD in your car, or if you want to use a memory disk, or if you want to stream it on your iPhone or your Android, or if you want to watch it on your desktop, whatever that is, you're going to get all of those sources. And we're going to have to wrap up. Greg, anything to add to everybody?
Nope. I will see you guys later. Thank you.
I know we're all booked with appointments in 38 seconds here, I think, or 17 according to my satellite clock on the wall.
All right. But everybody really needs to get moving on this right now.
Yeah.
Thanks,
and we're going to schedule a couple of program installation meetings with anybody and everybody who takes advantage of this. So again, Mindy's number is 303-808-8719, or go to extraordinaryadvisormarketing.com and you'll get all of that content.